today we are going to be going over our Week 2 power rankings for the 2025 NFL season. Without further ado, let's get into these power rankings. Now, before we go over the power rankings, this is probably going to be the week where the most change happens, just because it's the first week. We didn't really know what to expect from these teams, but we'll probably see less vivid changes in the rankings moving forward. First tier we have is the tier of teams that didn't really show much of anything last week. Giants at 32, the Saints at 31, the Dolphins at 30, and the Panthers at 29. Giants didn't even score a touchdown. I was excited for the Giants team. I knew they had a tough schedule, but I thought their talent-wise could keep them in games. That was not the case. They didn't do anything against Washington. The Saints, honestly, they kind of kept it pretty close against a decent Cardinals team, in my opinion. But there just wasn't much offensively outside of Alvin Kamara. Spencer Rattler didn't play terrible, but he wasn't the best either. Alvin Kamara was the only one. And Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson had a good game. So I bumped them over the Giants just because at least they kept their game competitive. And then the Dolphins and Panthers, while their games weren't competitive, I do think they would beat the Saints and Giants more times than lose to them. So I gave them the nod over those two. You know, a team like the Dolphins are definitely on the verge of being put at 31 or 32 based on what they did against the Colts. But I'm going to give them one more week. I don't know who they play next week. They play the Patriots. If they get blown out by the Patriots, they might go to 32. Because they didn't do anything well against the Colts. And then the Panthers at 29 honestly didn't do too much against the Jags either. So they're kind of all clumped in the same tier of teams that didn't do much last week. Next, we get the tier of teams that actually did a little bit and showed me a little bit in their losses in week 1. That's the Browns at 28, Titans at 27, and the Patriots at 26. Browns kept it very competitive with the Bengals. I know the Bengals offense struggles early on in the year, but I really liked what I saw out of the Browns defense. Titans at 27. It was a tough matchup, an uphill battle on the road against a very good Broncos team that added to their very good defense. And while the Titans offense didn't show me too much against that really good Broncos defense, the Titans defense is the thing that surprised me about this game, as they held what I think to be a pretty decent Broncos offense in check. And Bo Nix didn't do too much against the Titans, so I was really impressed with what I saw from the Titans defense. And then on the Patriots side, it was them and the Raiders, I think, are very close to me in my power rankings. They're like one spot ahead. Pretty much the winner of that game determined who got to be the higher team in the power rankings. Because they did bottle up, Ashton Genty. They played a good game against him. But their secondary wasn't the best. Geno Smith had himself a pretty good game. And Drake May played well, but the run game did not. So there was things that I liked about the Patriots in their week 1 game, and there was things that I don't like, but I do think they are a better team than the Titans and the Browns. The next tier is teams that actually won their game outside of the Jets at 24, but it just wasn't against the best competition. You got the Raiders at 25, the Jets at 24, Jags at 23, Colts 22, Cardinals at 21. Again, as I said earlier, Raiders and Patriots very similar in my opinion. I just gave the Raiders the nod over the Patriots because they beat them. But it wasn't like they had this crazy impressive game against the Patriots by any means. Jets at 24, I was very impressed with mainly Justin Fields and this Jets offense. Breece Hall had a great game. Garrett Wilson had a great game. Justin Fields played very good against a very, very good Pittsburgh Steelers defense. The Jets defense was a little questionable, but I'm assuming they'll be a better defense than bad for most of the season. So I put them at 24 over teams like the Jets, Patriots, and Titans just because I really liked what I saw against a very good Steelers team. Jags at 23. They got the win over the Panthers by, I think, like 16 points, but honestly, it wasn't the most impressive blowout win. They just weren't as bad as the Panthers. Because I think the teams like the Cardinals and Colts showed a little more in their victories. Colts with a blowout win over the Dolphins played really well. And then the Cardinals, it wasn't the best win against a bad Saints team, but I have them over the Colts. One, because they were 22 to begin the season, whereas the Colts were 27. And I just think the Cardinals, similar to with the Panthers, Dolphins, and Saints, Giants, I think the Cardinals are slightly better than the Colts, but they're very, very interchangeable for me at the top of that third tier. Then we get to the next tier of teams, which are teams that ended up losing, but in very competitive games against good teams. Bears, that first drive against the Vikings looked very good. And then their offense didn't really do too much after that. Because some of the points they scored was the pick six. They scored. So at the beginning of the game, the first drive they played very well. And then like the last half of the fourth quarter, they played really well. And everything in between was not that good offensively for the Bears. I did like what I saw from Caleb Williams overall. He had his downs during that game for sure, but as a whole performance, I really liked what I saw out of Caleb Williams and that Bears offense. I think they just need to work on that, on finishing the drives a little more to put up more points than what they did. But the defense played very well. I know it's rookie J.J. McCarthy who struggled early on in that game, but I really liked what I saw from Dennis Allen and the Bears defense. Cowboys at 19. I was a little low on the Cowboys post Micah Parsons trade, but they played very well against arguably the best team in the league in the Eagles. CeeDee Lamb had a great game. Dak had a great game. Outside the drops, CeeDee Lamb had a good game. The Cowboys defense impressed me. They didn't stop Saquon too much, and maybe the reason they were able to slow down the pass game of the Eagles was because they focused so much on the run game. Or no, because they focused so much on the run game, and the Eagles still kept running at them. But the Cowboys secondary, Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland, played very well. Falcons at 18, they almost beat the Bucs. They should at least went to overtime, but Younghoe Koo missed the field goal. But I did like what I saw out of Michael Penix. Kyle Pitts had a good game. Bijan Robinson played very well, at least in the receiving game. He had like 100 yards receiving. But again, I'm just not too sure about that Falcons defense. Yeah, it did definitely play better, to play that good against a very good Bucs offense. So they were improved, but I'm still not 100% in on that Falcons defense. Similar to the Falcons, the Seahawks definitely should have won that game against the Niners. They had it, and they just let it slip through their fingers. But Sam Darnold, I thought, played a solid game. Nonetheless, Jackson Smith and Jigba had a great game. Sam Darnold didn't, wow you with the stats or anything, but he really force-fed JSN. He had 150 yards, and JSN had 124 of those. Their defense played well against a somewhat healthy Niners team because George Kittle and Ayuk Ayuk was out the game and Kittle was out most of the game. But I still think the Seahawks are going to be a very competitive team. This didn't really disprove anything I thought about the Seahawks, or I don't know. My opinion didn't really change much about the Seahawks. I just think they could have won that game, and maybe they should have. And then the Texans at 16, I was a little disappointed in what I saw from the Texans. I knew, going to the Rams was going to be a tough matchup, but I thought they could keep it a little more competitive than they did. Stroud did not play his best game. Granted, the O-line didn't give him too much help. Nico Collins didn't do too much, if anything. Nick Chubb had an okay game. I liked what I saw out of Nick Chubb to hopefully keep that run game alive until Joe Mixon comes back. The defense did play very well. Now, you did let Puka Nacua get 130 on you, and Kyron had an okay game. But overall, Texans defense was good. We knew that was going to be the case. It was more the offense with the Texans, and they just didn't show me enough compared to the teams that I bumped in front of them. And they also lost too. Next tier is the teams outside of the Lions that, I don't know, just they won the game. Some of these teams really impressed, some of them not so much. They just kind of impressed me more than that previous tier of teams who lost. So you have the Bengals at 15. It was an ugly win, but a win nonetheless. You beat the Browns. They finally win a week 1 game. Niners at 14. It wasn't the prettiest win against the Seahawks, but you got to win regardless. The Lions, now they didn't win last week, but they were ranked 5th before the year started for me. So, and they had a very bad game against the Packers. They didn't look good at all. So I moved them down 8 spots to 13. And then the Steelers at 12. I really like what I saw from Pittsburgh. Similar to the Jets, their offense massively surprised me, where their defense kind of let me down. But overall, I trust that the Steelers' defense is going to be good, and I'm not too worried about how they played against the Jets, and I'm more focused on how well the offense played against a good Jets defense. Then we get to the next tier of teams. didn't have the prettiest wins or lost the game, and they're just right outside that next tier of really good teams. And that's the Rams at 11. Again, ugly win versus the Texans, but a win nonetheless. You have the Vikings, another ugly win versus the Bears, but I really was impressed with the Vikings defense and McCarthy in that fourth quarter, towards the end of the fourth quarter. The Broncos at 9, another team that their defense played well, but we expected that. But their offense kind of let me down against the Titans defense that I do like, but I do think they could have executed a little more against that Titans defense, especially at home too, with how well the defense played. Then the Bucks at 8. Now, I wasn't too impressed with the Bucks, at least offensively, but I just was more impressed with them than I was with the Rams, Vikings, and Broncos, so I bumped them up to 8, and they got swept by the Falcons last year, so to get a win against them this year is huge. And then the Chiefs at 7. Now, they didn't win in ugly, close fashion like the other 4 teams did, but they were second and lost a game to a good Chargers team, a close loss. And there were positives in that game, but the Chiefs defense did not play well, like at all. Mahomes struggled a little bit on that deep ball early in the game, but he figured it out late and showed you why he's still Patrick Mahomes. Run game wasn't the best. The pass protection was improved. That's for sure. Getting a guy like Josh Simmons helps so much. But they now don't have Worthy potentially next week. They still don't have Rashee Rice. Hollywood Brown had a very interesting game, to say the least. So I wasn't impressed too much with what I saw from the Chiefs outside of Patrick Mahomes, but I still think they're one of the better teams, and I didn't want to put them too low because not only did they almost beat the Chargers, but it's a good Chargers team that they almost beat, whereas the Bucks beat the Falcons, who are 18th. The Broncos barely beat the Titans, who are 27th. The Vikings barely beat the Bears, who are 20th, whereas the Chiefs almost beat a top 8 team. So that's why I still have the Chiefs at 7, even though I'm not as in on the Chiefs now than I was before the season started. Then we get our next tier of teams, which is the teams just outside the best of the best, but I need to see just a little bit more out of them to maybe put them in that best of the best tier. We have the Chargers at 6, the Commanders at 5, and the Packers at 4. Chargers at 6. I figured they were going to be a good team. They made the playoffs last year, but they really impressed me against the Chiefs, especially that offense. Herbert played great. Hampton statistically didn't have the best game necessarily, but I really liked what I saw at Hampton. Quentin Johnston had a good game. Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey. I really liked what I saw from the offense. I love how Herbert is throwing the ball and getting chances to throw the ball. And then hopefully that defense can play even better than they did against the Chiefs, because they played decent against the Chiefs, but they definitely could play better. They can definitely jump up to that top tier. Commanders at 5. It's not really their fault, because they played the worst team in the league, in my opinion, and the Giants are one of the worst teams, and they just did what they needed to do. They didn't blow them out. But they also didn't barely win. They just won in convincing fashion. So I didn't see a lot from the Commanders, but they didn't really need to show a lot to win the game. So I think they showed a little more than, teams like the Chiefs. That's why they got bumped up to 5, and they made the NFC Championship last year. And they're still a really good team. Jaden Daniels still really good. But I just want to see them really have a statement game before I put them in that next tier. And then the Packers at 4 were really close to it, dominating a very good Lions team. But is the Lions a really good team or not? We don't know yet. So we don't know how impressive that win is yet. But I liked what I saw from Micah Parsons in the somewhat limited snaps he had. He did get his first sack too. Jordan Love played very well too. I was really impressed with Jordan Love and that Packers offense. And they still only have Christian Watson. But Dobbs had a good game. Jaden Reed had a decent game. Josh Jacobs had an okay game. So I think with the Packers, similar to the Chargers, I really liked what I saw against a good team. But I just need to see a little bit more of it again to put them in that next tier. And that best of the best tier, we have the Ravens at 3, the Bills at 2, and the Eagles at 1. The Ravens and Bills, after that game they had, were pretty much 2 and 3 to me, and whoever won, I bumped them up to 2. I still like the Ravens. I know they lost, and their defense didn't play as well as maybe I thought they could have. especially with how they were playing early on in that game. But they did everything right outside of finish and win the game. Derrick Henry played great. Lamar played great. Zay Flowers played great. And all they needed to do was execute at the end, and they would have won that game. And the Bills at 2, I gave them that spot over the Ravens 1 because they won, but I was very impressed with Josh Allen. I mean, there's not much to really be said about Josh Allen. We know what we're going to get from Josh Allen. Keon Coleman had a really very good game. James Cook had a solid game, as he always does. And the defense impressed me not the first 3 quarters. They didn't play very good in the first 3 quarters. They gave up like 40 points in like the first 3.5 quarters. But towards the end, they made the plays when they needed to. They got the fumble out of Derrick Henry, and that ended up giving them the opportunity to then win that game. And then obviously Eagles at number 1, reigning Super Bowl champs, got a win against a good Dallas Cowboys team. They didn't have the best game. You know, A.J. Brown didn't play the best. Devonta Smith didn't play the best. They couldn't stop CeeDee Lamb. I'm worried about their coverage in like slot receiver type areas. But honestly, it's week 1. You're not going to get a perfect game necessarily from any team, at least like when these teams are playing other good teams. But I think it's just fair to keep the Eagles at 1. They were 1 going into the year, and they won a game against a good team. But that is my week 2 power rankings. Let me know some of your thoughts in the comment section below. And again, how you think your team did in its first game. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.